Hey everyone, it's METAGAMESGX here, and we're going to be talking about YCS Providence and my beginning of ALIN, format theory going into it for both of the decks I'm potentially taking, whether it's going to be Mitsurugi or Branded Despia is still yet to be seen, but I did want to talk about these two decks, and I know a lot of people have, questions on really my builds for the format. We're also going to go card by card and make the deck list itself because I have both deck lists already that I want to run for both decks in the face of a format with Malice. I did make a video saying that Branded Despia is very good post ALIN, and I think it is actually for the most part. If you're looking for a deck that can board break and a deck that can actually play through tons of hand traps, I think Branded is going to be your best option, or one of them at least. When people are playing Mermal, I think there's no reason not to be playing things like Branded and Labyrinth and stuff like that. So I think that Branded is going to be a fun and a very skill intensive deck to end up taking, to such a long tournament because, you've got to know your matchups, kind of thing when you're taking Branded Despia to a tournament where it's almost near tier 0, right? Like Malice, let's call spade a spade. The deck can't really go second outside of non-engine. The engine has no board breaking capabilities inside of it. However, it has one of the best going firsts maybe ever in the game, so there's a lot to be said with a deck that can go second in that kind of way. So I think that overall when that's the case, we're gonna have to be preparing for Malice, which can run things like Dominus Impulse. Some of them can run Bestials. I think a lot of them have opted to cut the Bestials. And so obviously we're going to be dealing with Malice. I also think obviously Mitsurugi and Ryzeal will be the other best decks. I think other decks like Memento, Mermal will still be around. Check out my top rogue video if you want to see exactly what I think for what's going to happen for the format outside of the Malice, Ryzeal meta. But I do think that there's a lot to be said with Branded. It's a nice meta call. It plays through lots of hand traps, like I said, because most Branded combos that don't just lose to an imperm actually end up playing through 2 to 3 hand traps, which is very notable in my opinion. Even things like Dominus Impulse, you don't just straight up lose against. These Shadals I want to talk about at the end for my Shadal Branded lovers. We're going to talk about that over there. So I do think that when that is the case, Branded's actually a pretty decent option to actually take into a format with lots of hand traps. I see people like DB Grinder saying your deck is basically dead on arrival if you're not running like at least 17 hand traps going second against Malice. And that's probably true for some decks. I think Branded is one of the decks that can get away with running less obviously hand traps because it's a deck that board breaks, so it's able to use its engine. It uses Super Poly so well, right? Like it's the best Super Poly deck in the game. Super Poly says you cannot respond to it, which is just crazy in my opinion against a deck with like multiple negates. So you can go Super Poly, make a Garura by fusing off their Firewall plus their Adignister link, or if they end on the Terahertz, either or. And then you get rid of Malice's 2 best monsters, and then they just have White Binder plus hand traps, right? So Super Poly being very good in that respect, and then also you can obviously just go into a Mirror Jade or something like that that's super strong. And we went over in the last video, I'll link down below, we went over the end boards for the Malice ALIN video. This is a really nice complimentary video if you already watched that. Proskinion, obviously you can go normal summon, like, preferably a Luber, but Quem, and then they go Imperm, and then you can chain Super Poly and fuse off 2 of their Cyberse monsters and make a Proskinion with the Quem, and then you still, you could steal a monster, then you could steal their Omni Negate or something like that. And then you could also, you also end up getting the search, whether it's a Luber getting the search off of, and they go neg off the Imperm as well. So it's never bad to use your own bodies, in my opinion, for the Super Poly, of course, as I mentioned in the last video. So, and then also Forbidden Droplets are also just really premium, in my opinion, against things like Mitsurugi, and then also it's not bad against Malice too, because it just, getting rid of their like stopping their White Binders, super important in my opinion. That's one of the only cards that can really do it, in my opinion. That card's so hard to play against. And most people aren't playing Droplet, right? So like I think a lot of people, like even DB Grinder is saying, and like other pros, you know, people are gonna end up playing. If you're playing Malice, you actually take the Fualos challenge. If you get Fualos as a Malice player, you take the challenge. You give them the draws, because what's a Malice player or a Ryzeal? I guess a Ryzeal player can draw into X Ryzeal, but what are they drawing into that's a board breaker? What deck is running board breakers this format? Like I said, most decks are considered dead on arrival if you're not running board breakers, because people are like, oh, board, you just get FTK'd against Malice, which it's not an FTK, but it's basically an end board that can be played through against most decks, because most decks don't run board breakers. And I think Branded's one of the best board breaker decks in the game anyway. So like, I think Branded actually can get away with that because of things like Super Poly, Droplet, being able to use your own resources very well. Like Droplet doesn't really make you go neg if you use your own spells and traps. I was also thinking about Mud Dragon for the Super Poly, but I don't think we need Mud Dragon. It would be, you don't need it for Malice, it would just be for Rogue, right? Chaos Hunter, I went over this in the last video. I think Meowl's Lancea are just way better, and then also you could use Fubalos too, so I don't want to be playing into Thrust, because every Malice player in all the tournaments that have been Post ALIN so far have been siding Thrust, so if you're playing into Thrust against Malice, you're just losing the game in my opinion, or just, you're really taking a really bad, like a wacky chance, you know? Fulos, like, once again, we do have to run it. And yeah, no, if they give Branded a bunch of draws, that's fine, right? Like, and they don't know if we're on Branded game one. So running the Fulos main deck, I think, is going to be very good. I'm also going to be running Meowl's main deck. Glad it's right there. So that is going to be the goo for the updated list. We are still on 60. That is still what I'm ending on. I think it is just overall just the ratio that works out the best for what I'm trying to run. I want to run 3 Meowls, and then also the Nadir package, obviously, to play through the impulses, and then also all the hand traps. It's also not bad going second, I think. Like, once you know, it's basically like last card Branded fusion, right? If you've already broken their board. And then, you know, things like that we're gonna have to consider. I think Meowls in the main deck is very good though too, because what are the best decks, right? Like, you're always going to get a draw with this card, whether it's Mermal, whether it's Memento, whether it's Malice, especially, right? This is basically a turn skip against Malice, and I mean, obviously they'll probably just give you the challenge, right? But for those reasons, I do think that we should still be running it, because Branded thrives on card advantage. If you have like 3+ cards in your hand as a Branded player, you're probably winning that game, it feels like. So in a format where Meowls is actually going to be very good, in my opinion, it's going to be very good again into a lot of decks. You'll at least get a draw against most decks. Even Blue Eyes you get a draw against. You know, Mitsurugi, it's quite good against, because it stops their, you know, their ability to whether it's looping the Feral Imps or going Node in that version, or, you know, reviving the Murakamo and stuff like that. You're getting card advantage at the very least, which is good against that deck. You need it essentially. But yeah, no, I think the Mulcharmies, you're gonna end up having to run 6 to 9. You could even run the Perulios in my opinion if you wanted to, but that might be going slightly overboard in the main deck. I think Malice, for the most part, really only gives you, you know, 1 draw off of that, but I don't think it would be terrible either. I think you can, you know, catch them off guard sometimes and then end up getting a few more draws, so that's always, you know, in your pocket. And I think it should probably be in your side deck for the other matchups, just because it covers most of your rogue matchups. And once again, card advantage is just so premium and Branded, especially this upcoming format. Like, if you're starting the turns with like 9 cards in hand, you are just winning that game probably. Like, you know, it's just like Snake Eye format on a certain level. You're going to be playing through these boards, and Branded does that very well with engine, with a combination of engine and non-engine especially. I think Phantasme is something I'm not really going to be considering because of that thrust issue, but that is something to still consider possibly for the last 3 slots. That, or like Ghost Spell, I was thinking, because Ghost Spell is also just very premium against Branded. It's something I'm going to run in my Mitsurugi deck, so, or sorry, premium against Malice. It also stops like Bestials, but once again, I don't think the Bestials will be there too much. I think I've been seeing a lot of people cut Bestials recently in their Malice decks, so that's, I guess, good for Branded, right? But now we have to deal with things like stuff like Dominus Impulse and stuff like that. So for the last topic of Super Poly, there's also the Super Poly targets I'll put on screen if I remember to. It's basically like the World Chalice fusion, which requires 3 link monsters. And I think there's a Predaplant fusion that requires 3 dark monsters. I think the Predaplant fusion is dead on arrival because it does not work out with the lights that they make. But I also think that the World Chalice link is not bad because if you get a board of them having like Whitebinder plus like Firewall plus the link adding Mister, that's pretty decent. Like that's pretty good card economy, and it doesn't have a bad effect either. But I think it's overall just probably better to run Garura because Garura gives you that synergy with running Maximus to make you play through Nib basically 24/7. Nib will be everywhere. Nib is very good this format, paired with a hand trap. So I think you want the Maximus for that instance as well, but also it makes it just a lot better for that reason alone. So I think Nadir is going to be very good. Things like that. Also double Mercurier, obviously, because I think I'm going to be running. Actually, it depends. It's going to be a gamble on the Meowls, I think, overall, if it's going to work out or not. Because Branded, it didn't work out for me when I ran Perulia in Ubel format, because I was like, oh, or sorry, not Ubel, it was Fiendsmith, like, it was basically the Beatrice format for our Nats format, and the Perulia didn't work out. I just bricked on it, and I don't want to brick on the Meowls, so I'm making sure I'm running a build where I don't exactly brick on it. We can talk about a few other topics that I wanted to get into with Branded, so that's why I basically was kind of just talking about the Malice matchup for the most part, but I think things like, the Mitsurugi and Ryzeal matchup you'll still have to worry about, but I don't think it will be as big, obviously. I think that, knowing to Bestial on the Murakamo is quite good. It's quite important. And then also if you're running any form of hand traps, obviously like Ash on Saji is very good. But overall, since you're probably playing Branded, that's not going to be what you really want. Also, I just think we play into those boards way more because the Murakamo hand rip does suck, but like we have the ability to clear it with like whether it's droplet or super poly a lot of the time. If you don't draw the non-engine though, it's not looking great going second, but that's why you run the Mulcharmies, Fulos, Meowls, once again, hits those decks probably almost as hard as it hits Malice, so it's just fine in that regard. And so we were already playing through Ryzeal end boards essentially last format, so I think this format's totally fine as well. So like Star Ryzeal just makes it so they play through Droll now, right? Like we're kind of running Droll, I guess, but like not really, so I think it's fine. Also, Starving Venom Dragon might be the other super poly target, I guess, that you could consider. But once again, they're going to have lights as well, so I think that it's probably dead on arrival for that reason alone. Also, triple fusion duplication in the side deck, as always, guys, as always. Also, thinking about Stapelia just for its like utility, branded in white, of course. I was thinking about actually running triple Cartesias. I'm going to bust out one of my other Cartesias just in case. Double Retribution's actually going to be in my deck as well this time around. I think Double Retribution is really working out in Master Duel quite well, so I want to try it out in TCG as well for the grind game. It's just so nice being able to turn Shrouded Dragon into the ultimate crackback piece. Like having this card be able to go Shrouded Dragon, send Retribution on turn 3 and 4 is crazy crackback, right? Because now you don't always have to have like Branded Retribution to get to Branded Fusion, but sometimes you do. So like having the second one is really nice too, just so you have an actual grind game, because if you only have one Branded Retribution, no Branded Sword especially, you really cut down on your grind game super hard. So I think having the double Retribution is going to actually be a fine addition. It's also another card you can set off of Albion the Branded Dragon in the end phase, which is really good. Obviously, we are running Branded Branded Banishment and Branded in red for those options. But I do think that having, more options in the form of Branded Retribution, because having the Omni Negate on summon is really good. It's obviously not an Omni Negate, but it's a summon Omni Negate, as I like to say. Oh boy, Golden Sword Soul. This is another card I do want to also potentially try out. Gizmek Uka is also not going to be good this format because Fiendsmith will not be played. Like, I was going to mention that later in the format, later in the video, but I think that Gizmek Uka is not going to be good in this upcoming format. I've seen some people run Gizmek Uka, Post ALIN, and I'm not sure what they're doing. I think it's very bad because of the fact that you just aren't going to be able to get the value out of it that you were getting this format um with all of the frankly Fiendsmith players right now, right? So like they're going to be gone. They're going to be playing pure Malice. I don't think Fiendsmith Malice is the best variant. Sorry, Triff. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. We'll see, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. And then there's my third Shrouded Dragon. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So still looking for a few different cards, but I do think that overall we can still continue on with the conversation that we were just having. In terms of other matchups, I think the Mermal matchup gets solved by the cards that we have for both our Mitsu and Mitsurugi Ryzeal matchups, and then also Malice. I think Mermal just catches all the crossfire between the sides for those decks, between things like Meowl's Drone Lockbird in my side deck, and then Fuelos, Perulia. So I think for the most part, that matchup is pretty easy if you're able to see your non-engine. And even in 60, if you side enough, right? Like I've always said in 60, you should overside so you can see your side deck. So if you're playing 60, like I probably will be, you want to side in like 12 cards going second, right? And then have like 3 sides for like you're going first, essentially. Obviously, you might have to truncate some things if you're running so many Mulcharmies. That's the thing, because you have to run. You don't want to have Mulcharmies and going first. So, like, that's always the deck building issue, which I will definitely have to, solve at the end of the day. But I wanted to give you guys the process and, what I'm going through with preparing for this YCS. Dark Ruler No More is also something I kind of thought about running potentially. This is going to be better in Yummy format, but I think right now I don't think it's because it just gets omni negated by the Mitsurugi trap. But against Malice, it's not terrible. I don't think. Honestly, it might just be something I could potentially run. So I'll keep it out just in case. Am I missing anything now? I don't think I'm missing anything. Oh yeah, double kit. I couldn't find my double kit, so I might just not be able to run the double kit. But the Golden Sword Soul is something that a lot of people have been talking to me about in my Discord, and it's a very cool card. It is able to basically, it's a very good anti-Tenpai card. A lot of people ended up running this card in Tenpai format because when your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon it. And if you do negate the attack, and then you can destroy the monster essentially, which is pretty good. But then if a monster is banished face up during the end phase, you can ban it, or you can banish this card from your graveyard or field and special summon one light spellcaster from your hand or graveyard. So basically, this makes a lot of your Mulcharmy lines a lot better, and it's a great way to play through hand traps, especially if you have like Cart or Quem in rotation. If you send in Golden Sword Soul plus Fallen of Albaz off of the Branded Fusion under Fuelos, you can make Sanctifier and then trigger the Golden Sword Soul essentially on your opponent's turn, and then end up being able to make the Sanctifier, or sorry, making Sanctifier with Lad and Mirror Jade. You have to have like some other cards in rotation, but it's a very good like card facilitator. It's a very good brick. I'd argue it's maybe even better than Adlib, but it's something I want to maybe consider. It's also something in the OCG I heard that they were running to play around things like Impulse also. This is in Max C especially, so I think that's especially why like Master Duel players really love this card, because it helps you play around Maxi. It makes your Maxi line super, super good. So I think that's why they end up running it more than we do, but it's something that we could consider, and you could consider in your branded deck as well. And then so double kit, like I said, double kit is also very good because it can be special summoned from your hand, which is very good, especially with Branded High Spirits. It just makes all your Branded High Spirit lines very good, because you can insulate, like if you have, normal summon a Luber and you have a dragon in hand, you can normal summon a Luber with Shrouded, go, instead of going Branded Fusion, you can search the High Spirits, pitch the Shrouded, and then search the kit. You get rid of a card because of kit, but you insulate your line because you end up sending like an Albion the Branded Dragon. So if they ash you, okay, great, you have, Branded Red or Branded Banishment, or, if you don't have access to a red target, you can send Titanclad, which sets up Albaz or Cartesia on your opponent's turn. So there's a lot you can do so that you don't just immediately lose to Ash Blossom, which is why a lot of people end up losing on Branded, because they just don't maximize their lines that they have with cards. And I think that kit also is, like I said, it gets around your normal summon issue a lot of the time, because you'll, whether it's like with Super Poly or Brand High Spirits, I think it's very good to be able to just have this card. Also, just hard opening it with the High Spirits already is pretty good. So you can just search something else out. So running the double, I think, makes sense. I saw a lot of people actually trying triple or double because it can play around the normal summon issue in Branded. So that's something that you could also try out. Double Retribution, I already talked about, just very good for the grind game. And then the lock is probably not needed because of Malice right now, which is kind of interesting because Malice, they can't go second, right? Like if you look at, any video of a duel, or if you've played against Malice already in your Post ALIN testing, you'll know that they can't go second with Engine. So, if they've already dumped their hand traps into you and you make a board, they can't play through it. That's the goal with Malice. If you go first, you have to get through their hand trap checkpoints. And if you do, you win the game. They can't use Failure on your turn, right? So it's like a lot of these things aren't cards they can use on, they can use Impulse, they can use Ash, but that's about it. And Ash is already dead on their own turn, so against Branded for the most part, unless they Ash the Gwignall, which is usually not important unless you're playing through hand traps, which a lot of the time you can just run things that already play through hand traps, which Ido does a lot of the time, so that's why I'm thinking about not even cutting it, because of the fact that it still helps just with your alliance playing through hand traps. But I think overall, as long as you can put up like one interruption against Malice, 1 or 2 interruptions, and they've already hand trapped you, right? They don't just have full gas. They can't win. So for that reason, it might be worth it to just not run the brick in the Ido, or at least side it for going first. That's just something to consider, because going second, you don't want to see this, right? But also going second, you kind of do against Malice, because if you can't OTK them, you want to lock them because their crackback's insane. So for that reason, you might want to keep it for going second, which is funny. Going first is not that needed, but I think Lad is just fine against them. I think Mirajade and Friends, Borreload, Pot with Chaos Star Source, with Guardian Chimera, looping Mirajade, all those things are totally fine. And then, like I mentioned before, less Fiendsmith and Kashtira in theory, so I think you can run like a single Mirajade, and especially with do the Darwin Nabaz theory with like double or one Mirajade and one Adlib. I think that's like actually looking pretty good, because there will be less Kashtira Unicorn, and like I said, less Fiendsmith, so less Bestials, and less like Fiendsmith in Paradise and stuff like that to play around. So I think that changes deck building up somewhat. Thrust is going to be everywhere, so once again, be careful with going overboard on Bestials in a Malice meta, especially, and like things like Chaos Hunter. So just don't unnecessarily play into Thrust, especially games 2 and 3. You need to be careful about that. Also, for the kit theory with like getting around the special summon, I think Cartesia kind of fits that bill as well. So you could probably 3 Cartesia is why I'm thinking about doing that as well, where you can just special summon her out by just having an Albaz in graveyard, play around your normal summon a lot of the time, but she's not a starter is the difference. Grass is going to go nuts if you build for it, which you can run double Retribution, multiple Bestials, multiple Shrouded, and then things like Blackout Laughs. I don't own a Blackout Laughs anymore, so I don't think Blackout's very good in Post ALIN. So, but I think there's other things. Also, Tearlaman's Shiren, I think, is a bit of a brick. It's really bad in hand, so I don't really like the card. But if you run Masquerade in the main deck, which I always side Masquerade, you guys see it in my side deck. These are all my side options, guys. My 50 card side deck, I'm gonna have to cut down to 15, so it's legal. But I think Masquerade is gonna end up making the cut in any regional or above list. I think Lancia and then Droll will make the cut as well. Like I said, I'm putting up the screenshots of the list on the video so you guys can see what I'm potentially taking. And then I didn't mention the Shadal package. I think the Shadal package is if you run Shadal Fusion, because you can send the Nel Shadal Genius and then also a Shadal Dragon, and then you can end up breaking the board pretty much off of it. If you end up getting to the App Cologne through things like your your Cartesia, which can just make Grand Guignol and end up sending the App Cologne and getting you the Shadal Fusion, then you go Shadal Fusion, make whatever construct, I guess, at that point. But you would prefer to have the Shadal Fusion, and then you'd be able to send things like Nel Shadal Genius plus like a Shadal Dragon, and then trigger the App Cologne and effect to negate a phase up card, Shadal Dragon pop a card, pop a GWC or whatever, and then also the Genius to negate a face up monster. So that's 3 interruptions off the Shadal Fusion. Obviously, if they have Impulse, it's not looking great, but it's not bad overall. So that is what I wanted to talk about with Branded in the Post ALIN format that I wasn't really able to, kind of the stuff that really came up after the video. Also, evenly matched doesn't seem as bad as some people think it is against Malice, because you can obviously clear the rest of their bodies and then you just deal with the Malice boards. So I think evenly with droplets, not bad. And I saw a lot of people in the OCG run that for their Malice decks or Malice matchups. So something to consider, guys. And everyone, good luck. If you're at YCS Providence, please let me know. And come say hi. I'll be, if anyone wants to say hi, come get a picture or whatever. I'll be around. I don't bite. Looking forward to seeing people and competing and, branded best deck. I'm going to make a video on Mitsurugi Ryzeal as well, because I want to talk about my thought process with deck building with that as well. So this video will come out here on Thursday, and then hopefully the Mitsurugi deck will be out on Friday. So with that being said, guys, thank you for watching. Leave a like down below. Let me know what your favorite part is of the video was, what your favorite tech that that I went over was. What we're going to be talking about going into the Post ALIN format. I want to know, was it the Golden Sword Soul? Was it the Shadal Fusion? Let me know down below. Or the double kit. The double kit is kind of gooey, I'm not going to lie. So, with that being said, guys, I'll be talking to you later. Leave a like down below. Subscribe, road to 20K. Check out my website if you want to get my branded and Mitsurugi spreadsheet and all that fun stuff. Join today, become a member, use your Twitch Prime. See you guys later. Thank you for watching. Appreciate every single one of you guys. Bye now.